prostitute now?
No.
Effective when?
About 2 months ago.
You haven't turned your trick in 2 months.
I haven't picked up anybody off the street. I've stayed with, last couple months, just with my steadies. The ones I've had since I began working.
Protect your girl from Bobby Digital.
Sometimes I find someone fucking with my pussy, my money and my ride. Tuck my knot inside my hoodie. Sometimes I find someone fucking with my pussy, my money and my ride. Tuck my knot inside my hoodie. Sometimes someone fucking with my pussy, my money and my ride. Tuck my knot inside my hoodie. Sometimes I find.
Catch me if you can, loving. Rocks laced in the band, nothing compares when my niggas frontin'. Ride shotgunning, Bobby keep the love coming. I'm sitting pretty and my loving is today.
First tipped out my laboratory, just dropped down about 40 stories. Hit the ground, you analog cats ain't got nothing for me. Red and blue mismatch shoe, Havana Joe who wear bandana. Tell you Vegas type whole silly like Dantana. Bubble Hill finger goose, go thick as hangman noose. She had the honey blonde hair mixed with the chocolate mousse. Butterfly tattoo, boo, let me holler at you. And I changed that tattoo to a Wu-Tang tattoo. New York City Diddy Bop type slant. Girl, let's smoke a branch, hit the jack dance. Then after that we could dance with the Black Widow. Gold bins with the chrome griddle. Fat juicy lips, Emily, let me taste your spittle.
Catch me if you can, loving. Rocks laced in the band, nothing compares when my niggas frontin'. Ride shotgunning, Bobby keep the love coming.
Hear rap like Angela Bassett from Malcolm X. Ice cold boulder checks. Cassette of Inspector Deck. Uncontrolled substance. Earring inside her belly button. And one inside her power use. She says he used for nothing. Scream on it. Bobby the Black Green Hornet. Girl, dream on it. I put the killer bee sting on it. Rejuvenated. Honey kept her throat lubricated. Let off so much cheese, ginseng couldn't recuperate it. Back scratching, eye squinting. Dustin Dawn Quentin, Tarantino type porn. Like Lewinsky, Bill Clinton. Suck it down with no commercial. Good power, universal, self-savior. Why? B-O-B-B-Y.
Catch me if you can, loving. Rocks laced in the band, nothing compares when my niggas frontin'. Ride shotgunning, Bobby keep the love coming. I'm sitting pretty and my loving is to G.
Girl, scream on it. Bobby the Black Green Hornet. Come on, dream on it. Killer bee sting on it. Screw the top off the boiling rod. Girl, you must be boiling hot. Sit on my uncoiling cock. Let me strike your G-spot.
Catch me if you can, loving. Rocks laced in the band, nothing compares when my niggas frontin'. Ride shotgunning, Bobby keep the love coming. I'm sitting pretty and my loving is to G.
Kept a nigga well fed, put 7 braids on my head. Pillow soft as cobweb, Egyptian cotton best spread. Lying deep between the legs, I mix the sperm with the eggs. Bust off about a keg, she called it creamy nutmeg.
Catch me if you can, loving. Rocks laced in the band, nothing compares when my niggas frontin'. Ride shotgunning, Bobby keep the love coming. I'm sitting pretty and my loving is to G.
So on my high beams, her breast was like 2 scoops of ice cream. I scream, you scream, we all want ice cream. Bone her till she fall asleep, she can have a nice dream. I scream, you scream, we all want the ice cream.
Catch me if you can, loving. Rocks laced in the band, nothing compares when my niggas frontin'. Ride shotgunning, Bobby keep the love coming. I'm sitting pretty and my loving is to G. And my loving is to G. And my loving, and my loving, and my loving is to G.
Seattle. The year was 1869. A tall, suave, well-dressed gentleman picked his way through the piles of goods at Water's Edge, brought by the same lumber schooner which had carried him from San Francisco. His name, John Pennell, and he would leave his mark on Seattle history. The logging camps were roaring, 10,000 men living and working in the flourishing lumber industry around the city. By day, they swung the huge axes in the timbered hills. At night, they gambled, fought, and otherwise tried to entertain themselves in the camps. John Pennell was a man of some vision, and a business opportunity rarely escaped him. There were no women, so Pennell shipped the first white women north of the Columbia River. From the well-stocked houses of the Barbary Coast, Pennell recruited his ladies for the huge male population of womanless Seattle. He once bragged, "Give me a lonely man on payday, a girl over 12, and I'll build you a business community." His girls were established on a sawdust fill south of Yesler Way, and the bright glow of honky-tonk had arrived. Pennell, Seattle's first procurer, faded from the scene, but prostitution flourished. In a short time, seamen and lumbermen, gold panners and hard rock miners spoke of this new city, and they dubbed it the harlot of the Northwest. At the turn of the century, 3 cable cars operated in the city. The Madison Line ran north, the James Line in the city's center, and the last, Yesler, went south. Prostitution in the city grew, centered below Yesler in what was called below the line. The line was in fact Washington Street. It ran south from 1st Avenue to 3rd Avenue. There below the line, notorious names like Lou Graham, Lila Young, and Ray Roberts became almost household words in their era. And what an era it was. Lou Graham's house occupied the southwest corner of 3rd Avenue and Washington, a half-block away from Seattle's first city hall. Some said more city business was transacted at Lou's place than at the official city offices. When Lou died, her entire estate was willed to the public school system. The crib houses and parlor houses of Seattle continued to operate under the pretext that it would keep prostitution out of hotels and residential areas. Both that idea and city administrations came under fire from irate citizens who lived below the line, many of whom were finally forced to post signs reading "private residence" to slow the traffic of after-hour pleasure seekers knocking at front doors. And so the years passed. In World War I and II, soldiers and sailors waiting at nearby bases discovered that much of downtown Seattle was posted with off-limits signs, the only way the military could cope with the problem. By the end of the war, public pressure and changing attitudes in the city ended the era of bright lights and painted ladies, but not the business. Prostitution outlived the madams and the houses that filled our lusty city history, and in the process, prostitution became tougher, less gaudy, and rooted in the vice of the city. Prostitution in Seattle remained in varying degrees through the 40s and 50s. Knowledgeable pleasure seekers knew the contacts and where to go. Still, the streetwalkers and outward signs of vice remained confined to specific locations, such as the International District, and for the public it was a case of out of sight, out of mind. Then in the 1960s, the court ruled Section 16 of the City Code unconstitutional, too vague. Suddenly, the police found themselves without a loitering ordinance, the common excuse for keeping the girls out of sight. In short order, enterprising vice merchants discovered the new loophole. The number of girls working the streets trebled. Seattle citizens found themselves brushing off the advances of prostitutes, even in the company of their wives on an evening out. And the hookers, pressured by the insistent demands of their pimps, moved into the heart of the downtown business district, roving a 4-block area of Pike Street between 3rd and 7th Avenue. In January of 1969, the pace of prostitution reached its peak on Seattle streets. Upwards of 100 girls were walking Pike Street, with still others working in the International District and on the hill at 14th and Yesler. Since Pike also contains several theaters, restaurants, and stores, the public abruptly found itself quite literally face-to-face with the problem of prostitution. Store workers returning to their homes after an early morning inventory assignment related in startled amazement stories of being accosted at 6 in the morning by a hopeful prostitute looking for one more trick. Theater owners and store managers filled the police lines and City Hall mail with complaints. Linked to that was a barrage of complaints from the girls' unwary clients who listed muggings, knifings, blackmail, threats, and general thievery as an added price for the girls' attentions. Health officials noted an unhealthy rise in the presence of venereal disease. When an arrest could be made, officers put a health hold on the girl, allowing a city doctor to test for venereal disease before the girl would be released on bond. Approximately 25% of those arrested showed positive reactions to VD, rather frightening odds for the prospective customer to consider. But the girls actually arrested remained a small percentage of the total. The law required an overt act of solicitation before arrest. The girl must not only agree to perform intercourse for pay, but had to enter a cab or hotel, or otherwise prove she intended to go through with the bargain. Even using available patrol officers and special squad members as undercover agents, the Vice section discovered the girls were very clever. They posted lookouts and regularly attended court cases of their fellow hustlers, spotting the officers and memorizing faces and arrest techniques. Further complicating the arrest procedure was appeal bail. Following an arrest, the girl posted bond of $500 usually, of which she paid only $75 to a bondsman. If convicted, she posted another bond or let the old one stand. For $75, she remained on the street during appeal, and in one night could make up the money. The appeals were log-jammed in the Supreme Court, with prostitutes with 8 or 9 convictions with no sentence, not unusual. When months later the Supreme Court was able to act and the sentence finally imposed, the girls simply left town to work Portland or San Francisco or San Diego, a never-ending cycle and supply of prostitutes. The police frantically sought a remedy to the situation. City attorneys burned midnight oil, rewriting the loitering ordinance to meet rigid Supreme Court specifications for clarity and precise language. Finally, a new law evolved. It made it illegal for a known or convicted prostitute to accompany other known or convicted prostitutes in an area where soliciting is known to take place. The films you are watching were taken by KIRO to assist the police in testing that law. By spring of 1969, the courts had agreed the law was sound, and Seattle officers had a new weapon, not perfect, but substantially improved. Now they could pick up the girls after making observations of their actions on the street. Police took up posts in offices, hotels, and in their cars to make up a logbook on the streetwalkers. On a recent night, the action looked like this above Pike Street.
We missed Lois just waved to this older fellow, about 55 or 60, standing in a corner. He was leaning against the cab, walked over and had a conversation while she was talking to him. A green cougar walked her, or drove around the corner, and he was looking at the girls, and she waved.
He's talking to another guy.
Right, she's really working.
Lois is trying to work pretty hard.
They obviously, you don't know we're here. Let's see who that girl there is. Do you recognize this one in front? Oh, is that Shelby? This guy, is this Shelby here? That's Francis Shelby, isn't it? Looks a little like her. Looks a little young.
Could be Peggy Hill.
That's who it is. That's who it is. Peggy Hill. They're about the same height.
Yeah.
Right. There, Lois just stopped another
guy. He knows how to go on Buster because
look at, she talked to that guy also, the bald-headed one that just walked by.
you know what I mean? If we don't, we're going to lose her.
How much time have we got on him, though?
Using the new law, the Pike Street action has been cut an estimated 60%, but is still highly visible on any given night. As a vice, prostitution is very profitable and involves little risk to the pimps and panderers who keep the girls working. But for the city, which serves as host to this parasitic social problem, the trouble only begins with the surface vice. Sergeant Bob Dodge of the Seattle Vice Squad knows the streets and the girls all too well.
You got 2 girls working here on Pike Street. What kind of a history have you got that prompts this kind of a thing?
Well, these 2 girls here, we know these girls as street-walking prostitutes. They've been talking to a couple of gentlemen here that look like they're average middle-class businessman type of persons. These girls have just spotted us here now. They quite obviously are hiding around the corner. They recognize myself as a vice officer. But these are the typical type of girls that walk the street up here and ply their trade with the customers that are available.
Did the change in law make a big difference to you when the Supreme Court ruled the original ordinances out, the abroad at night ordinances and the vagrancy ordinances being too vague and unspecific? Was that kind of a changing point in the way the street action worked?
Years ago, we had some ordinances where we could just simply put a girl in for frequenting taverns. We called them tavern girl ordinances. When these were declared somewhat illegal, well, we had to look to another source of enforcement program. And we did have an offer and agreeing ordinance that was being used on the books, but this wasn't the total answer to the problem. We had to have something to take care of the actual loitering for purpose of prostitution on the street. We found in our experiences in this particular type of crime here that where you find prostitution and prostitutes operating as such, that you'll find all types of crime, allied crime that go with this. You're going to find narcotics. Where you find prostitutes, you generally find safecrackers, burglars, stick-up men. They seem to go hand in hand.
Are most of the girls themselves thieves?
Not necessarily the girls so much as just being thieves. They've turned to this type of crime as to robbing their customers because of the pressures put on them
by the pimps.
By the pimps, and the pimps in their greed for more money. The fact that the Seattle Police Department has put a tremendous amount of pressure on the girls. We've eliminated the problem to a point where it's manageable, it's controllable now. This is cut into the pocketbooks of the pimps. The pimps, naturally, with their take-way down, have forced their girls into turning to the crime of larceny from the person. They take the trick up now, and instead of fulfilling the trick, they generally rob them. And this is quite a common activity now in the prostitution game.
How would you equate the problem now as compared to, say, a year ago with the new ordinance, the loitering ordinance that you have, the more specific one? How do you feel you're doing?
We feel that we've gained considerable ground with this problem. Heavens, a year ago you could walk down this street and we've counted as many as 17 at one time standing on one corner. And now you will find a few. Naturally, it's a type of a problem where you can't eliminate it altogether, because where there's money available like this and there's customers available, you're going to find prostitutes.
While the girls of Pike Street may be the most obvious reflection of prostitution in Seattle, they comprise only a small percentage of the actual vice picture. Hotels and bars have had an almost classic relationship to prostitution over the years. A man out of town, away from home and recognition, is a likely customer. While most reputable hotels strongly discourage liaisons on their property, it occurs nonetheless. In a one-week period of time, 3 girls were picked up by police at the prestigious Olympic Hotel. Officers usually are following up on a complaint by the hotel's own security, but occasionally they spot a girl known to them making her exit from a trick just completed. More difficult to deal with for obvious reasons are the higher-priced and more sophisticated call girls who may work only for steady customers, and they are most discreet in their assignations. Of more recent origin, the sauna and the massage parlor has in some cases become a device for the practice of prostitution. Vice officers have made arrests in a number of areas of the city, including outside the line in South King County. They are arresting for lewd behavior linked to the sauna parlors. In many cases, the girls limit their relationship with their customers to something just short of actual intercourse, which accounts for the distinction of the law between offering and agreeing to prostitution and what is defined as a lewd act. Again, the problem of police control is difficult due to the lengthy and secretive procedure necessary to place an officer inside one of the establishments. Quite obviously, the growth of motels and roadway inns has raised the number of available rooms and locations to impossible levels. In such cases, a self-policing attitude on the part of the management of the motel becomes the last recourse. Police files and reports are dotted with the stories of a suburban housewife or an airline stewardess who decides to supplement her income by turning an occasional trick. While the information is known to police, it is usually well after the fact and of such limited frequency as to rule out active investigation. By the time a woman has developed enough customers to cause neighborhood complaints or the concern of a motel manager, she moves out of town or simply quits. Such is usually the case with a go-go dancer who picks her customer carefully over a long night of contacts in the club and then retires to her own or the customer's apartment or house for a single trick, usually at high pay. Again, an extremely difficult chain of contact to interrupt through the use of a plainclothes officer. Almost all of the girls have learned to avoid young men not in military uniform, preferring the safer and higher-paying older business type who spends freely and causes no trouble, not wanting personal embarrassment. It is the personal embarrassment which clouds the use of a customer as a witness against a girl. Few men's ego will allow them to admit they paid for their sexual relations, and there is always the added humiliation for family and friends. While vice officers consider these contacts part of the overall problem, operating houses of prostitution are of more concern. Between 10 and 15 such houses are believed operating at present in the city. They work almost exclusively on a referral basis, keeping involved file systems on their customers, quoting identification, background, probable income, the numbers and style of tricks, and even credit references. The houses are so well insulated and organized that they will in fact even take checks from customers. A casual reading of the file cards reveals a cross-section of businessmen, attorneys, doctors, contractors, insurance men, salesmen, most with above-average incomes. A favorite type of customer might come down from Alaska to Seattle. He's a businessman or possibly an engineer. He may have several $1,000s in his pocket, and for 2 or 3 weeks the man enjoys his time away from work with lavish spending and extremely lucrative results. Sharon is one of the house girls. She was a student at St. Mary's Girls' School in Seattle. At the age of 12, she was put on the street by her mother. At 13, she was pregnant and gave birth to a son who is now 8 years old. For the past couple of years, she has worked out of houses. The money and the hours are excellent.
Is that a different sort of work than working on the street?
Yes, it is.
In what way?
Well, I mean, you don't have to always be looking around for the police and everything. You just go there and the people come in, they choose who they want, you go with them, you come, it's just one of those, you really relax in between.
What hours did you work?
1 to 6.
How many tricks would you turn in that 5 hours?
Well, it depends on how business was. Anywhere from 5 to 8 or 9.
How many girls were working in the house?
3, 4, maybe more.
If you were going to just make an estimate, how many houses do you think are working in Seattle right now?
Quite a few. If I had to make an estimate, I'd say about 15, maybe more.
Have you worked many of them?
I've worked about 5 of them.
Most of these houses operate about the same way?
Well, no, not really. It depends on who's running them and how they want to run them.
All right, supposing we use the house where you were working. If you turned a $25 trick, how much of that money would you get?
15. They get 10.
So if you turned 5 tricks in the night or in an afternoon, you'd have $75 then.
Mm-hmm.
That's, again, is still quite a bit of money. What does the money go for?
Rent, food, clothes.
You buy a lot of clothes?
Well, considering I've got a little girl to dress.
On a recent sunny afternoon this month, Seattle police were able to infiltrate a long-established house on 17th Avenue. It's been operating for 15 years, but on referrals only. Inside, they arrested 4 girls. The madam is an older woman who runs her house on a most businesslike basis. All of the girls were known to the police from prior arrests or complaints. Inside the house, a series of pornographic films were seized. The interior of the home resembled nothing so much as a 1940 movie set of what a bordello might look like. The girls were booked as occupants of a house and held for health examination, 48 hours. But by mid-afternoon, the madam was out on bail, likely busily locating replacement girls for the remaining hours of the business day. For the police, however, there is a sense of accomplishment. Knocking over an established house such as this scares off a number of customers, and it provides access to new information on the way the house is run and by whom, leading to more opportunity for arrests in the future. With up to 15 such houses in operation and from 5 to 10 girls working at each, there is a future of long and difficult law enforcement lying ahead. There is little understanding on the part of the public for the life of a prostitute. Remarkably, it's quite the same in any large city. While in the beginning it may be an improvement over a coarse existence in a poverty-ridden home, it shortly becomes a tragic day-to-day existence marked by physical abuse, threats, and an almost total lack of self-respect and personal esteem. Marie has been working in Seattle as a prostitute for 18 months. She's an attractive girl and would like to get out of tricking altogether. She's 21. Together, Marie and Sharon present the girl's own view of their life.
You into prostitution?
Well, I'd say depressed and maybe being raped a few years ago. I don't know.
In what way? Let's talk just a little bit about the kinds of things. Now, your husband, you were young married. You've been married how long?
I've just been married about 4 months, and my husband went to prison. And I got slightly depressed after that, and I had a real bad car accident about a month after he went to prison. And I was hurt quite bad in that, and I recovered. But the bills started coming in, and I didn't have any way of paying them, and still depressed over my husband being in prison, plus being sick afterwards from the accident, and just everything at once.
Well, you didn't suddenly just pop up on the street. How did you make a connection? What physical act?
I met a Japanese guy, and he found a trick for me. It was someone he knew, and that was my first act as a prostitute.
And the next night?
Next time, the Japanese guy knew a Chinese friend, and he took me down to Chinatown. And he found the tricks, and all I did was wait in the room. And then he brought him in, and I did 6 guys that night. And after that...
After that what? What did you do?
Well, after everything was all through for the night, all I could do was cry. That's about all. I couldn't do any more than that. I just sort of...
What were you thinking that night?
Well, how badly I needed the money and what I had to do. And when I did it, I was sort of scared. I was quite scared. I didn't know what was going to happen or what was expected. And but after it was through, I felt really dirty. I just felt like I just been dumped in a bath of mud.
What was your day like?
Oh, I'd go to school and come home, and my mother'd be at work or she'd have somebody there, and so I'd leave, and then finally I got so that I'd start in too.
Where did you work first?
Jackson Street.
How many tricks a day were you doing at Jackson Street?
Oh, when I first started, I was only doing about 4, maybe 5.
Didn't anyone ever ask you that you were awfully young?
No. I didn't look that young.
Were you quite a buxom child?
Pardon me?
Were you quite buxom, breasty?
Yeah.
What sort of customers did you have at that age?
No, lawyers, insurance men, Chinese, and it varied from, whoever was around.
Did you have a pimp then?
No.
And you were getting quite a large amount of money for a young girl. What were you doing with the money?
Buying clothes and helping my mother out, my grandmother, and just, spending it like any normal kid.
Did both your mother and your grandmother know that you were soliciting?
Well, my grandmother didn't know, but my mother knew.
Did she care?
No.
How do you feel about your mother? Do you have any affection for her?
No.
What became of her?
Well, she died of an overdose of heroin.
Oh, there's quite a few girls that do it.
How does it work? How would you approach a man from a car?
Usually a stoplight. When they come up to a stoplight, they'll be next to you, and you look over, and if they happen to look over and see you, smile and say hi. You ask them what they're doing, and ask them if they want to pull over for a minute so you can talk to them. And then you get to know them. You ask where they're from, what they're doing here, where they work, and just generally find out whether the police or not.
Will a man generally be honest with you at that time? Will he tell you his name and what he does?
More or less. Well, with a lot of guys, I look so innocent. I didn't look like a prostitute. And they didn't take me for one. A lot of them were surprised when I asked them if they wanted to date. But most of them give you an honest answer. They want to know if you want to go out for a drink or something. When you get into, well, you want to date, go to bed, then they sort of hit them all of a sudden, but then they think about it, and then why not?
How do you set the price?
Well, when I first began, I just named a price, and then after I got to know what I could do and what I couldn't do, I just asked them more or less, well, what do you want to spend? And kept it at that.
What would you normally get for a trick? What might be an average amount of money?
Well, I usually tried never to go below 20 for a trick, and it went up anywhere to 100, 150, 200, even more than that. It depended on who the trick was and how much he wanted to spend and what he wanted.
When you first became pregnant?
13.
And you had that child?
Mm-hmm.
Boy or girl?
Little boy.
How old is he now?
He's 8 years old.
And he's still with you?
No, he's not with me.
I mean, you still see him?
Once in a while I see him.
Does he know that you're a prostitute?
No.
You have any other children?
Yes, I have a 10-month-old little girl.
And you're pregnant now?
Mm-hmm.
Why would you not have an abortion?
I've had abortions before. It's not too safe for me anymore.
How many have you had?
I've had 3.
Do any of the girls work with a pill or any other contraceptives?
Most of them do that I know, but I can't take them. I have side effects.
You ever tried to commit suicide?
Yes.
How?
Cutting my wrists.
May I see that?
Hmm?
How many times have you tried to commit suicide?
3.
Does it bother you to talk about it?
Yeah.
Sharon, do you think of yourself as a happy person normally?
Maybe on the outside.
Marie, are you a tough girl? You hard?
That's a hard question to answer.
All right. Do you still weep?
Yes, when I care about somebody and I get hurt by them.
Do you care about you?
Not that much. But I'm the only one who can take care of myself. So I sort of have to.
What do you want out of life?
I've tried to figure that out for a long time, and I'm just starting to get around to that now. But I haven't quite found that out yet.
Do you think in terms of things like money, home, children?
Well, I used to think in terms of money, but I found out that money isn't that important. And I'm thinking in terms of children and a home, and I just hope I can have children.
Do you want to adopt them?
I may have to, yes.
Why can't you have children?
Well, I was raped when I was about 15 years old, and I caught a venereal disease. And I had it for 3 years, and the doctors are pretty sure that I can't have kids because of it.
You've had venereal disease. You've been raped at the outset. You've been beaten innumerable times. How do you consider that as a kind of a life?
Well, I figure everyone has their own kind of life, and some learn the hard way and some learn easy. And I just learned the hard. And at least I know what it's like. I've been there.
Underlying the degradation of the women who work as prostitutes are the procurers, who in reality provide the real social threat. It is they who coerce, recruit, and even kidnap to put girls on the streets and into the houses. They work as a loosely defined confederacy, exchanging girls, enforcing their control, setting up houses and payoffs. Generally, a pimp will attract his girl through a romantic personal relationship at first, declaring his affection and concern. Once the link is forged, there is a quite sudden shift in attitude. The girl is threatened, kept in tight control, perhaps beaten, or subjected to the physical abuse of several men at once. When the girl is put on the street, it is with the clear understanding that she had better return with money, in sizable amounts. In return, she is provided clothes, food, and little else.
And then you progressed and you had 3 totally in your career.
Yes,
Let's talk about the third one. He's in prison now,
yes,
and you put him in prison.
yes.
For what reason?
Well, I couldn't take giving him all my money, and I never got anything out of it. All I got out of the money was for gas, for driving around trying to make more money, or maybe something to eat, and that was about it. Otherwise, I got nothing out of it.
Did he beat you?
Quite a bit when I didn't get enough for him, or when he got mad at me, I didn't do something right, or when I came home, a couple times when I came home and I maybe had $70, $80, and he wanted something like $150, $200.
And $75 or $80 for a night was not enough.
Yeah. Not when I knew what I was doing.
What would a good night be for you when you were working well?
150, 200.
And all of this went to the pimp.
Yes.
How did you live then? Did he give you spending money? Did he maintain the apartment? How did this all work?
When I got the money at the end of the night, before I even took off my clothes to go to bed, he'd have that money in his hand. Or I'd have it out of my purse and on the dresser if he was sleeping. He always had it before I got in that bed and went to sleep.
Most of the girls picked up by vice officers confirm the brutal treatment of the male pimps. Hospital reports show broken bones, severe bruises, knife cuts, a lengthy list of torment heaped upon the girl who fails to perform. At the same time, the pimps adopt a high flair for life, driving expensive cars, gambling large amounts, and dressing in expensive attire. One girl, named Tony Sutton, had her arm shot off by her pimp. She continues to work the streets. And on the fringes, there are young aspiring pimps called players, ready to pick up any girl cast off by a more successful procurer who may have a stable of girls working for him. It is this environment, a web of coercion, which generally seals off the escape of those girls who would try to get out. There are those few instances where a girl who has faced the reality of the streets has the small good fortune to attach herself to a pimp not so aggressive or demanding. Locked into the life, she may not have any desire to escape from the role, to battle with a society which has rejected her long ago as a low form of humanity. Even though she may see little of it, the rationale of giving up a $100 a day job for a secretary's post or a waitress's apron offers little appeal. Rehabilitation is a serious challenge to any dedicated social welfare program. Few work, and those that have some measure of success require long periods of concentrated effort on the part of individual workers. In the course of our investigation, we were to interview a reformed pimp and his wife, now working with a parole caseworker. The night before the interview was scheduled, we observed the same girl turn a trick on Pike Street, and in turn were observed by her filming the action. The interview never took place. Mrs. Donna Gort operates one of the few halfway houses existing for young women in the nation. Many of her girls have a background of prostitution. She provided dedicated and intensive care for 14 girls at a time.
I think there's very little opportunity to go out, at least the kind of opportunities that's needed. First of all, if there aren't many places to go, and there's not many places to go and ask, where do you go? I think that these girls that are used to, there's two sides of it. A prostitute that is able to go out and make good money and maintain herself is going to look at with a dim view at something that can't offer them equivalent money. A girl that's being held in it against her will, it's pretty hard to get her out because they won't let them out. They are subject to physical beatings, and the pimps that have them working don't want to lose money. So,
do they have any confidence in the social processes will work?
No. I think they think adults are a phony lot, and if they say we're here to help you, that to them means jail or imprisonment. They don't know that there's any other kind of help.
Would you like to see additional houses like this, expanding your own facility? How would you deal with it?
I think the only answer is more community-based programs with a family-type situation. Most of these girls have never had a family, and if they have had a family, they haven't had sufficient support on a family basis, moral support, I mean. And it's almost necessary to go back and recreate a regrowth process psychologically if you want any degree of mental health at the end of the trail.
Do these girls think of this as a soft touch? Are you hard on them? Are you easy with them? How do you deal with them?
No, it isn't a soft touch because, again, we're not talking about this house versus freedom. You're talking about it instead of a prison or a jail sentence. The program here is very structured. They don't run as they please. If a girl comes from prostitution, this also probably goes hand in hand with drugs. And if you have a girl with drug problems, you simply do not let them run around on the Seattle streets or Capitol Hill because they're going to come back in with it. They're going to try to get it. They're going to contract old friends, and so it's necessary to hold them pretty tight until they can adjust to a different mode of living.
When a prostitute is convicted, the options given the judge are few. Rehabilitation is a slender thread. Less than 10% are qualified for release programs and counseling, and a jail sentence has proven to have little value. Municipal Court Judge James Noy is faced with the daily task of sentencing.
The problem is that sentencing people to jail in the city facility, which has very little room, limited kinds of services for rehabilitation while in custody. The person serves the time in jail and comes out and hasn't been changed. And of course this is true of many defendants who were charged and convicted of various kinds of crimes. We don't know as much as we'd like to know about the personality of a person who would take up prostitution. They're individual people. It's a way of life. It's a style of life. And convincing someone to conform to the mode of life in the community is easier when you're talking about convincing them not to steal than it is when you're trying to get them to change a whole way of life.
The likelihood of changing this way of life seems remote at this point in time. As long as the customer remains, a procurer will be willing to exact his pound of flesh to service the need. Talk of legalizing prostitution has been heard for years, but in countries where it has been tried, the record holds out little hope that such a legal ploy would work. Added to that is the disquieting idea of substituting the state for the role presently played by pimps. It would require a callous citizenry indeed to recruit and maintain the houses, or to tolerate those who would be willing to run the houses for government. You are then left with a level of control as the alternative. Public pressure and local traditions will generally dictate the placement of limits on the acceptable amount of prostitution in any area. But that would ignore three other basic questions, which at present do not have acceptable answers. The first, how to combat the associated crime which shadows the girls and the money. Second, how to deal with health hazards, including venereal disease, unwanted pregnancies, and mental illness closely linked with prostitution. And third, how do we reverse the cycle which robs these women of self-respect and locks them to an outcast society of their own? Having looked at alcoholics, drug addicts, and the like, we must now consider the same attention and care and inventiveness in plotting an escape route for girls with no paths open to our side of the line. If the prostitute with a heart of gold is a dead cliché, so too is the centuries-old standard of out of sight, out of mind. The human spirit deserves a better accounting.
When you look at yourself, do you see a pretty woman?
No, I don't.
What do you see?
Well, it depends on my mood a lot, because I'll look at myself and I'll just figure out I'm just ugly. I just look ugly. And then other times, when I feel good, then I'm happy, and then I feel pretty. But most of the time I don't.